Hey, good morning everyone. It's Dale here from dnmservices. Just bringing you some footage from the start of day 3 of this project. Cleaning up this property in preparation. Day 3 of this job in cleaning up this property for preparation for sale. You remember yesterday I was allowed kindly by this gentleman who lives next door to park my machine at his hard stand near his shed, which is right beside the property where I am working on, and it allowed me to have access to an area that was going to be difficult to get into, but without damaging the other neighbour's property as I walk in. We've got a lot of rain here, so yeah, it would definitely left a footprint, but coming through here, all I do is walk through a section of fence that was not there, but in return I'm cleaning up this guy's hard stand area. So if you remember yesterday, there was a gap in the fence. I'll point it out in a moment, and there was a lot of spindly sort of material there, which I've cleared up. So I'll turn the camera around and show you what we did yesterday. So keeping in mind that yesterday was raining nearly all day, but this is the area that it was all spindly weeds, and I really recall that there was he said between that post and that post you'll be able to get through because there's a section of fence missing, but there was a big section of fence missing, which is good. But I cleared all this up for the gentleman. When I put my buckets and that on to do the other work for the neighbour, I'll clean up any mess I've made. But a bit of a downhill run here across a little drain he's dug to repair a water pipe. But if you recall, that there was incredibly overgrown. Cleared it out down to the creek bank. I'm going to do the other side of the creek today. It was very muddy in here, so you have to excuse the mess, but I'll have to come in here and clean up rocks and things out of the way anyway, and some sticks and some logs. So I'll have a stick rake and the bucket, and I'll clean up this mess. It's mainly just surface mud because I was on an angle, and the mulch, believe it or not, looks a lot worse than what it is. But that's what we got into yesterday. A lot of it was pulling out the vines from the canopy I just cut the roots off and then drag them out with the mulcher and then mulch them on the ground. So a lot of vegetation removed. That was, the roots were obviously in the ground, but the vines were up in the trees. It was lantana and another terrible thing called a wait a while bush or vine. It's got spikes on it that you wouldn't believe it, hence why they call it wait a while, because if you hit it during a walk in the bush, it makes you wait a while while you untangle yourself. But I walked the excavator down into the edge of the creek, cleaned up. There were some logs here. I pushed them over into the creek, cleared it out. There was I did another little video where this was just all lantana right up into that tree, so very, very thick. So surprising the amount of vegetation I've removed from here. You can see all the vines hanging. That's all the lantana and the wait a while and other vines that I've cut off from the roots. You'll see one of them, where is it, right in the middle there anyway, quite a thick one. It's a tree branch that was hanging out trying to get some sunlight. None of that stuff in there would have seen sunlight for quite a few years, I'd say. So their little rainforest will come along nicely. This is where I did a time lapse from yesterday, ground zero for a wall of lantana. So I've been able to remove all the lantana from there, and there's other terrible, terrible weeds. I don't even know what they're called. I tried looking for them last night, but couldn't find what it was called. Clean the underbrush, clean through into the neighbouring paddock where the gentleman apparently this property is a different shape, an odd shape, but you'll see where it sort of was. I started cleaning up from here into the tree line, and the neighbour mows this section here, which I left, and got down into the creek. There's a fallen tree down in there, and I've got to do the other side of the creek today. Hopefully it's not too soft, and there's plenty of other stuff to do if that's too soft. So that was yesterday's achievement. It was some tough going, lots of rocks, and lots of vines, lots of slippery slopes, and even I even found an old wheelbarrow in amongst the carnage here. I don't know what anyone was doing with a wheelbarrow in amongst all this mess yesterday, but remember yesterday's video, this was where I was standing. You couldn't even get into. It would have been 20 foot high with lantana. Obviously that wheelbarrow was put there a long time ago. Anyway, Dale from DNM signing out for now. This is just showing you day 2, what we did, and I'm about to kick off in day 3.